What if the night sky above Hogwarts held one secret more powerful than any spell? What if, long after the wars were over and the ghosts had grown weary of whispering, Dumbledore finally chose to speak the truth that had burned within him since before you were born? Imagine candlelight flickering through stained glass, the air thick with the scent of parchment and smoke. As the headmaster stands before the fire, his face older, softer, yet burdened with something you've never seen before: hesitation. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'm really curious, from which part of the world are you watching this video? Write your country in the comments. Let's see how far this little story has traveled. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You are in Dumbledore's office, or rather, you remember it as you've always seen it, the curling silver instruments murmuring softly, Fawkes perched nearby, the portraits pretending to sleep but listening all the same. The war is over, the castle quieter than it has been in years, and yet here stands Dumbledore, very much alive in this what if, holding a truth that refuses to die with him. He looks at you, not as a headmaster, not even as a mentor, but as someone seeking forgiveness before it's too late. "There are moments," he begins, voice trembling with that familiar calm, "when truth is the kindest form of cruelty." His hand trembles slightly, tracing invisible symbols in the air, not wand work, but memory. You take a seat, the old armchair groaning beneath your weight, and for a moment time itself seems to pause. The castle breathes with you, the faint rustle of drapery, the shifting gears of an ancient clock somewhere in the walls, the sigh of the night wind through the window crack. Then Dumbledore continues, his words falling like the slow tolling of bells. "Before you were born," he says, "I made a choice that altered not just your life, but the very nature of fate itself. There's no thunder, no dramatic flash of light, just the unbearable honesty of a man standing before the one person who deserves to know everything." He walks to the window, his reflection trembling in the glass. You can see Fawkes watching him, not with curiosity, but with sorrow. And suddenly the room feels like a tomb of secrets. Dumbledore turns to you, eyes glimmering. "Do you know, Harry, why the prophecy was allowed to exist at all? Why no one, not even I, destroyed it when we had the chance?" You shake your head, your throat dry. He smiles, the kind of smile that feels like a farewell. "Because I had already seen what would happen if we did. I had seen it through something older than divination, deeper than sight itself." He moves toward the cabinet beside the pensive, unlocking it with a whisper of ancient words, not Latin, but something older, something that hums through the air like the low growl of a dragon deep underground. From within, he draws a vial of liquid that seems alive, swirling with both light and darkness. "This," he says, "was my first attempt at seeing time. You realize what you're looking at, a temporal echo, the kind of forbidden experiment you've only heard rumors of. Scholars still debate whether such a thing ever truly existed, the blending of memory and prophecy into a single magical medium. Yet here it is, trembling in Dumbledore's frail hands. He sets the vial upon the desk. "When I first met Gellert Grindelwald," he continues, his voice softening, "we believed the world could be reshaped, purified by intellect and intent. But we were young, arrogant, and most dangerous of all, certain." You notice his fingers twitch slightly at the name. He doesn't look at you now. He stares at the swirling liquid as if it holds the ghost of the boy he once was. "I tried to undo what we started. I tried to bind the very flow of time, to prevent what we unleashed. But I failed. The magic refused to obey. Instead, it showed me you." You lean forward, heart pounding. "Me?" "Yes," Dumbledore whispers. "A child yet unborn. A boy marked by love, not by prophecy. And I knew at that moment that my attempt to seal the future had created it. The silence that follows is suffocating. The portraits look down, some frowning, others pretending not to hear. Fawkes shifts uneasily, his feathers rustling like dry leaves. "The night your parents were killed. Dumbledore says slowly. I was not at Hogwarts. I was at Godric's Hollow. Not to stop it, I arrived too late for that, but because I thought I could still change what I had already seen. I thought time owed me a chance at redemption. The words hit like cold rain. You've always imagined Dumbledore as omniscient, deliberate, even cruel in his secrets. But this is something else, a man undone by guilt and the sheer weight of foreknowledge. He confesses that he had tried to manipulate fate itself to spare you pain, and in doing so, ensured it would come. Every time I guided you toward danger, he says, I hoped it might be the last. Every time you survived, I told myself it was destiny, not punishment. But I knew better. A sudden movement catches your eye. The vial on the desk glows faintly, casting blue and gold ripples across the room. Dumbledore glances at it but doesn't move to stop it. It reacts to truth, he murmurs, as though it has waited years for this. The colors pulse faster, illuminating the carved griffins and silver instruments around the room. You realize with a chill that the memory inside is alive. It's responding to his confession, and perhaps to yours. He gestures for you to look. Inside the swirling silver and gold mist, you see shadows. A younger Dumbledore, standing beside a figure half-shrouded in darkness, and beyond them a burst of green light that fractures into 1,000 pieces. That, he says, is the moment I knew the prophecy was a lie. His eyes close. There was never a single chosen one, Harry. There were two. The room swells with the weight of his words. You feel the old armchair's arms beneath your palms, the rough texture grounding you. Two? You whisper. Yes, he says simply. But one of them never lived long enough to be remembered. His voice breaks on the word remembered. For a moment, the silence in the office is unbearable. Then he straightens, as though shedding years of guilt in one breath. Her name, he says, was Isolde. The name hangs in the air like a spell unspoken. Dumbledore doesn't elaborate, not yet. Instead, he sinks into his chair, suddenly frail, like the candle's flame beside him. You see, he murmurs, the prophecy did not lie entirely, only in the way we understood it. Isolde was meant to carry the mark that you did. But fate, as it often does, took another path. She was gone before the words were ever recorded. And when you were born, the echo found you instead. Your head spins. You've heard many revelations in your life, but this feels different. It's not the triumph of knowledge. It's the ache of inheriting someone else's unfinished story. Dumbledore leans forward, eyes sharp again. The scar, Harry. It isn't just a connection to him. It's a bridge, one built on borrowed destiny. And it was my doing. The firelight flickers across his face, and you see the tears glinting there, silent and unacknowledged. I told myself it was mercy, he says softly, to let you live the story meant for another. But mercy can be the cruelest form of selfishness. He lets the sentence hang there, a confession suspended in time. Outside, the wind hums against the tower walls, carrying the faint echo of the lake below. You realize that this isn't a story about power or prophecy or even magic. It's about the terrible burden of knowledge, about the man who saw too much and the boy who paid for it. And as Dumbledore's voice grows quieter, the truth becomes almost unbearable. I wanted you to forgive me, he says, not for keeping secrets, but for believing I had the right to shape them. He rises, walks past you, and opens the window. Cold night air floods the room, stirring the papers, the curtains, the phoenix feathers scattered on the desk. Fawkes lets out a low, haunting trill, not sorrowful, not joyful, but something in between. Dumbledore looks out toward the moonlit lake. I have made many mistakes, he says, but this is the first I could not justify, even to myself. For a long time, neither of you speaks. The silence feels sacred, the kind that belongs in old churches or under ancient trees. You can almost hear the castle dreaming around you, the ghosts of laughter in the halls, the heartbeat of a world that somehow keeps forgiving itself. Finally, he turns back to you, his expression weary but at peace. Now, he says quietly, you know what I could not tell anyone else. What you do with that truth is yours to decide. The fire flickers low, the light dimming until only the soft glow of the vial remains. You look down, and the swirling mist has stilled, forming a single image. Dumbledore's face, younger, smiling faintly, before fading into darkness. When you look up again, he's gone. Only Fawkes remains, feathers gleaming like the memory of light. And somewhere deep within the castle, a clock begins to chime. Slow, solemn, echoing the rhythm of a heart that has finally spoken its last secret. You breathe in the quiet, the scent of old parchment and fading magic. You don't know whether to feel lighter or more burdened. But one truth remains. You were not the only chosen one, and Dumbledore was not the man you thought he was. He was something far more tragic, a man who tried to outwit time and lost. The room is quieter now, emptied of Dumbledore's presence, yet filled with his memory. The fire has dwindled to embers. The portraits have turned inward to feign rest, and Fawkes, the ever-loyal companion, stands watch beside the empty chair. You lean back, still feeling the weight of his words echo through you like the last toll of a distant bell. For a moment you wonder if what you just heard was truth, or merely the desperate confession of an old man seeking peace before dawn. But then Fawkes moves. His golden feathers catch the dim light, each one glimmering faintly like threads of sunrise trapped in the night. The phoenix tilts his head toward you and lets out a single trembling note. Not a song, not a cry, but something between grief and understanding. It vibrates through the room, through you, and the fire flares once more, revealing what Dumbledore left behind. A small fragment of parchment beneath the chair. You pick it up. The handwriting is unmistakable, elegant yet hurried, lines leaning forward as if written in motion. When the fire dies, remember that rebirth is never just survival. It is confession. Beneath the words, a faint sketch of a phoenix curls into existence, drawn not with ink, but with ash. The edges shimmer faintly, and before you can even decide whether to touch it, the parchment curls inward and vanishes. Not burning, not fading, but slipping out of time. Fawkes watches calmly, as if it's happened before. You remember what Dumbledore once told you, that phoenixes are among the few magical creatures that truly understand death. Yet in this moment, you realize there might have been another layer to that truth. Fawkes has always seemed to appear when things were at their worst. The Chamber of Secrets, the duel in the Ministry, the final moments atop the astronomy tower. But what if Fawkes wasn't simply a guardian or messenger? What if the phoenix was bound to something far deeper, a fragment of Dumbledore himself? Scholars still debate whether it's possible to anchor part of a soul without dark magic. The concept predates Horcruxes and outlives them, a form of benevolent tethering, a spiritual echo rather than a split. It was known in ancient texts as the anima flamma, the soul of flame. You think of Fawkes's rebirths, of the way Dumbledore always seemed to understand them as more than mere cycles of life. The old headmaster had once said, "Phoenixes burst into flame when it is time for them to die. And from the ashes they rise again." But what if those weren't just words about a bird? What if every time Fawkes was reborn, he carried with him a fragment of Dumbledore's emotion, his guilt, his wisdom, preserved through renewal? The theory sounds impossible, yet you've lived through stranger magic. You rise and approach Fawkes slowly. The phoenix doesn't move, only watches. His eyes, gold, endless, ancient, seem to hold memories that aren't his own. "He's gone, isn't he?" you whisper. Fawkes blinks once, a slow, deliberate acknowledgement. Then with surprising grace he spreads his wings. The motion sends a soft gust of warmth through the air, carrying the faint scent of incense and lightning. A single feather drifts loose, glowing faintly red. You reach for it, half expecting it to burn. Instead, it feels warm, alive, pulsing softly like a heartbeat. As your fingers close around it, an image fills your mind, not a memory, not quite a vision. You're seeing through Dumbledore's eyes, decades before your birth. He stands in a dimly lit chamber lined with ancient runes, Fawkes perched upon a pedestal carved from obsidian. Across from him stands another wizard, one you recognize only from books, Nicolas Flamel. The man's voice is soft but firm. You must understand, Albus, the Phoenix does not serve the Master. It serves the truth within him. Dumbledore nods, looking weary even then. And if the truth is flawed? Flamel smiles sadly. Then the rebirth will reflect that flaw. The vision flickers. You see Dumbledore reaching into the flame, his wand glowing faintly blue as he whispers something under his breath. Not a spell, but a plea. The fire surges, enveloping Fawkes in white light, and when the blaze fades, the Phoenix is gone. Only ashes remain. So it begins, Dumbledore murmurs. The image dissolves, leaving you standing once again in the quiet office, the feather trembling faintly in your hand. You realize now that Fawkes was more than a companion. He was a vessel, a living echo of every secret Dumbledore couldn't confess aloud. Each rebirth may have carried away a fraction of his burden, until nothing was left but the man who finally broke under the weight of his own silence. It makes you wonder whether Fawkes's tears, said to heal the gravest wounds, were truly drawn from the bird's compassion, or from the grief of the man he once mirrored. You place the feather upon the desk beside the empty vial. The two glow faintly in unison, the memory of the Phoenix flame and the residue of time magic humming together, as if recognizing each other after years apart. It's then that you notice something carved into the underside of the desk, words only visible by the glow. Rebirth demands remembrance. You whisper the phrase aloud, and the office responds. The walls shimmer. The portraits vanish, replaced by images moving within the stone itself. Dumbledore in his youth, teaching, dueling, laughing, crying. The memories play like the reflection of firelight across glass. You see him in the aftermath of Grindelwald's defeat, standing over the ruins of Nurmengard. His face is blank, his wand at his side, and beside him lies the Phoenix, freshly reborn, feathers damp with ash. For a fleeting moment, Dumbledore reaches down, brushing Fawkes's crest. "You remember what I cannot," he whispers. "Carry it for me." The memory fades. You exhale, realizing that Fawkes has been the silent witness to every one of Dumbledore's turning points. The duels, the deaths, the choices. And now, as the last remnant of that shared soul, the Phoenix seems to wait for something. Perhaps forgiveness, perhaps understanding. You sit once more, trying to piece together what all of this means. Dumbledore's confession in the previous night wasn't only about destiny or guilt. It was about legacy. He didn't just fear death. He feared being forgotten incorrectly. The Phoenix was his insurance, his living truth. But you also realize something else, something chilling in its beauty. If Fawkes carries fragments of Dumbledore's soul, even pure, non-dark fragments, then every time he is reborn, those memories risk fading, which means the more the Phoenix rises, the less of Dumbledore remains. You wonder if that was the Headmaster's true act of penance, to let himself dissolve slowly into the cycle of flame and rebirth, until all that remained were the lessons worth remembering. Perhaps this is why phoenixes are so rare. They are not just creatures, but the universe's quiet attempt to forgive humanity for its mistakes. Fawkes chirps softly, interrupting your thoughts. The sound is almost approving. The bird steps closer, lowering his head as if inviting you to touch the top of his crest. When you do, warmth floods through you. Not heat, but an enveloping calm that feels like being held by the very essence of light. In that brief moment, you understand why Dumbledore always seemed both ancient and kind. The magic that binds a phoenix is not about fire. It's about mercy. You whisper into the feathers, "Thank you for staying." Fawkes blinks once, and for the first time you could swear the bird almost smiles. Then without warning, the office shudders. The candlelight bends inward and the room darkens. Fawkes lets out a long, echoing cry and bursts into flame. You flinch, but the fire doesn't hurt. It swirls around you, filling the space with 1,000 flickering embers. Each ember carries a memory. Dumbledore teaching you to dance at the Yule Ball, laughing with McGonagall, walking barefoot through the snow at dawn. When the light finally fades, only ashes remain on the desk. And atop them, glowing faintly gold, lies a single rune etched into the wood. You recognize it instantly, Phoenix's, the symbol of eternal renewal. Yet beneath it a smaller inscription glows faintly. The truth must burn before it can rise. You lean back, heart racing, and realize that the Phoenix's final act wasn't death. It was translation. He has passed his memory, his truth, into the air itself. Somewhere deep in the castle you can almost hear a whisper. Dumbledore's voice, soft and distant. "Do not mourn me, Harry. Understand me." You exhale slowly. The room feels lighter now, almost hollow, as though something ancient has finally moved on. Outside the window, dawn begins to break over the black lake, painting the sky in the same gold and crimson as Fawkes's feathers. And for the first time in years, Hogwarts feels alive, reborn in silence, in truth, in flame. You close your eyes, letting the warmth of morning wash over you. Somewhere within that quiet, you sense Dumbledore's spirit, not watching, not judging, but at peace. And in that stillness, you realize the Headmaster's greatest secret was never just about guilt or prophecy. It was about love, the kind that survives through rebirth, even when the man who carried it can no longer stay. And as the first sunlight touches your face, you whisper what feels like both farewell and promise. "I'll remember." The first light of dawn creeps through the windows, spilling gold over the stone floor of Dumbledore's office. But you can feel that the morning carries a different kind of weight, the kind that presses softly against the chest, whispering that some truths are older than the sun. You stand where Fawkes once perched, feeling the last trace of his warmth still clinging to the air, and for a fleeting moment you sense the strange stillness that follows revelation. Dumbledore's confession and the Phoenix's final flare weren't the end of anything. They were a beginning. The feather, the vial, the ashes, they are pieces of a puzzle left for you to complete. And though the castle hums with ordinary life somewhere below, the faint clang of armor shifting in the halls, Greaves humming off-key in the distance. Here, in this tower, time feels fragile, stretched thin. You glance at the desk once more. The inscription that appeared after Fawkes's rebirth still glows faintly. The truth must burn before it can rise. You whisper the words again, and the rune beneath it responds with a low hum. The light deepens to a darker gold, revealing a hidden compartment within the desk. It clicks open like a sigh, revealing a single object wrapped in faded blue velvet. You lift it carefully. It's heavy, far heavier than it looks, and cold to the touch. When you unwrap it, your breath catches. It's a pendant shaped like a triangle enclosing a circle, with a line cutting through its center, the Deathly Hallows. But unlike any you've seen before, this one is incomplete. The line, representing the Elder Wand, is missing. In its place is a faint crack of lightning shimmering faintly. A chill runs down your spine. The pendant vibrates slightly in your palm, resonating with the air, as if waiting to be recognized. And then, quietly, almost imperceptibly, the scent of the room changes. Not smoke, not parchment, but something older, whetstone, lilies, and the faint sweetness of decay. You turn toward the fireplace, and there, for a moment, you think you see a shadow standing where no one should be. It's tall, robed, and its outline wavers like heat over sand. You don't move. You just whisper, "Who's there?" The voice that answers isn't one you've heard before, but it feels familiar, not in tone, but in truth. It doesn't echo through the room. It speaks directly into your chest. "The one he bargained with," it says softly. "The one he thought he could outwit." You step back, clutching the pendant. The shape of the figure solidifies, not monstrous, not skeletal, just inevitable. It stands like a mirror made of darkness, wearing neither menace nor mercy. You are... You start and then stop, because the word feels childish. Death is not a name, it's a condition of the world. And yet here it stands, with the calm of a being that does not need to be understood. He called me in his youth, Death says, its voice calm, distant, like water running beneath ice. Not in arrogance, as others do, but in grief. He wanted time to change what had already been written. I told him time could not be rewritten, only exchanged. Exchanged? You whisper. Death tilts its head slightly. Every act of defiance against fate has a cost. He offered me something precious, his reflection in flame. The bird you knew. You realize you're shaking.
Fox?
Death nods, a movement as fluid as smoke. He gave me half of himself to delay what must come. The phoenix carried his vitality, his conscience. In return, I allowed his body to walk among the living for longer than it should have. But every bargain is finite. When the bird burned its final time, so too did the last tether that kept him from my side. You look down at the ashes, still faintly scattered on the desk. The idea that Dumbledore, the wisest man you knew, had literally traded a fragment of his soul for borrowed years is at once unbearable and oddly fitting. He would never have chased immortality for its own sake, only for the chance to right one more wrong. Why did you allow it? You ask. Death's shape ripples, and you almost think you see a smile beneath the shadowed hood. Because he did not ask to live forever. He asked to finish something. Most who call my name do not understand that difference. You swallow hard. What did he finish? The answer comes in the faintest breath. You. The word strikes harder than any curse. For a moment you can't even speak. Me. You were his final act of defiance, Death continues. The child who proved that love could shape prophecy more powerfully than fear. The line between sacrifice and salvation blurred because he dared to believe that one could become the other. That belief delayed his end until the phoenix burned the last of his borrowed light. The pendant in your hand pulses. The cracked lightning line begins to glow brighter, matching your heartbeat. He said he saw me before I was born, you whisper. Through some kind of time magic, Death inclines its head. He did. That was the moment of the bargain. He looked through the veil that separates my realm from yours, and he saw what he thought was destiny. In truth, he saw the echo of what he would create. That vision bound you together, not as master and student, but as origin and echo. You look at the pendant again, realizing the missing line, the elder wand, might never have been missing at all. It had transformed. The lightning cracked the scar, your scar. The symbol was incomplete because it was still alive through you. I don't understand, you murmur. If he bargained with you, if he gave up part of his soul, then what happens now that he's gone? Death steps closer. The temperature in the room drops, not painfully, but like the deep cool of a tomb sealed from time. Now, Death says, the debt is paid. The flame has been returned. But remnants linger, echoes as they always do. You feel them already, don't you? The sense that he's still here? You nod slowly. Since the night of the confession, since the phoenix's last song, you felt something lingering at the edge of awareness. Not haunting, not comforting, just waiting. That is no ghost, Death says gently. It is memory without body. It will fade as all borrowed things must. Your kind is very good at holding on. But letting go, that is the one art even your greatest wizard never mastered. You take a deep breath. Is that why you're here? To take him? I already have, Death replies, but I thought you should know why. The honesty of that statement chills you. Death didn't come to threaten or to taunt. It came to explain, and somehow that makes it more terrifying. He said he wanted forgiveness, you whisper. Death's shape leans slightly forward, its tone almost tender. Then grant it. He tried to cheat me not for himself, but for love. That is not defiance. That is courage in disguise. The light from the window shifts. Dawn has given way to full morning. The shape begins to dissolve, edges fading like mist under sunlight. Will I see him again? You ask quietly. Death pauses before answering. when the fire within you is ready to rest. Until then, remember, every spell of protection you cast, every mercy you show, is his legacy reborn. And just like that, the air is empty again. The scent of lilies and stone fades, leaving only the faint hum of magic, and the pendant, now cool and inert, resting in your hand. You slip it around your neck, feeling its weight settle against your chest, like a heartbeat that isn't yours. You sit back in the chair, staring into the dying embers of the fireplace. Somewhere below, life at Hogwarts resumes, as it always has, laughter in the corridors, the clatter of plates in the great hall. Yet you feel the castle differently now. Every hallway, every portrait, every shadow seems filled with unseen threads, reminders that the living and the dead are never as far apart as people think. You run your thumb along the cracked lightning line of the pendant and realize something Dumbledore had never said aloud. The greatest magic he ever practiced wasn't the manipulation of time or the mastery of death. It was the art of surrender, of learning when to stop fighting the inevitable. He had made a deal with death not to escape it, but to understand it. And in doing so, he gave you more than guidance. He gave you a map through mortality itself. Outside, the morning light glints off the lake. You stand and open the window, letting the cold air wash through the room. The world smells of frost and renewal. Somewhere unseen, you imagine a flicker of flame, the beginning of another phoenix's song. And though the sky is bright, you could swear you hear Dumbledore's voice, faint and amused, whispering, "Well, Harry, it seems you've learned something new at last." You smile, just barely. The deal with death may have taken Dumbledore from the world, but it also left something behind. Not a curse, not a legacy, but a question. What will you do with the time he bought for you? And as the wind stirs the ashes one last time, you whisper back, "I'll make it count." The day drifts by in a blur of silence. Classes, meals, footsteps echoing in corridors. All the noise of Hogwarts feels oddly distant, as if you're moving through the memory of a place rather than the place itself. You've worn the cracked pendant since dawn, feeling its quiet weight against your chest. Each time your hand brushes it, the air seems to hum faintly, like something deep inside the castle is responding to it. You try to shake the feeling, but it lingers, a thread connecting you to a secret that hasn't finished unfolding. When evening comes, you return to Dumbledore's office. The door opens before you even touch it. Inside, the light is softer than you remember, tinged with the golden calm of sunset. The ashes from Fawkes's rebirth are gone, though the faint scent of burned cedar lingers in the air. You cross the room, eyes drawn again to the pensive, that familiar swirling basin of memory and thought. You've used it before many times, but tonight it looks different. The silvery surface is still, waiting, like a mirror holding its breath. On the edge of the basin rests a small crystal vial, unlabeled and sealed with wax. You can tell immediately that this one is older than the others. The glass cloudy, the stopper carved with runes so ancient they seem almost worn away. It doesn't look like something Dumbledore would leave out by accident. You pick it up, and the moment your fingers touch it, the wax crumbles. The silvery vapor inside stirs alive. You hesitate only a moment before emptying it into the pensive. The surface ripples. The air hums. And then, with that familiar pull behind your navel, the world falls away. You find yourself standing in a vast, circular chamber. Not the office, but something older, deeper. The walls are carved with phoenix motifs, their wings outstretched, their eyes inlaid with what looks like crystal tears. Candles float high overhead, and in the center stands a younger Dumbledore. Not the wise old man you knew, but the brilliant, restless scholar of legend. His hair is auburn, his eyes sharp with untempered conviction. And beside him stands someone else. You blink in disbelief. It's Grindelwald, not the grim imprisoned figure from the history books, but the charming visionary who once dreamed of the greater good. They're standing over a stone pedestal on which a small silver bowl rests. The first pensieve, you realize. Dumbledore's voice is steady, but there's something trembling beneath it. If we cannot rewrite the past, then perhaps we can preserve it, uncorrupted, unfiltered. Memory as it truly is. Grindelwald smiles, that too easy smile of someone who already knows the cost of what he's agreeing to. And yet, my friend, you already suspect what happens when one meddles with the mind. Memories are not truths. They are mirrors, warped by emotion. Even so, Dumbledore replies, mirrors can show what eyes refuse to see. The two men begin their work. Their wands trace intricate sigils in the air, weaving light and shadow into delicate balance. The pensieve glows faintly, silver deepening into violet. You feel the air thicken with power. What they are doing isn't ordinary magic. It's something older, something alchemical. The merging of memory and will. And as the spell completes, a faint voice whispers from the depths of the basin. A woman's voice, soft, familiar. Albus! Dumbledore freezes. His wand drops slightly. Grindelwald tilts his head, intrigued. That voice, he says. Who is she? Dumbledore's jaw tightens. My sister, he says quietly. Ariana. The name ripples through the chamber like wind through water. Grindelwald's smile fades, replaced by something colder, curiosity edged with cruelty. You used her memory. She was the first casualty of my arrogance, Dumbledore murmurs. If there is any redemption to be found, it must begin with truth. Grindelwald turns away, pacing slowly. Truth, he says, almost laughing. No, my dear Albus, truth does not redeem. It condemns, the vision trembles. The candles flicker wildly, their flames bending inward, as if drawn by invisible force. You step closer, heart pounding. The memory seems to be collapsing, as though the moment itself cannot hold what happens next. Grindelwald's hand flashes, his wand slicing through the air, and suddenly a crack opens above the basin, a thin seam of pure darkness splitting the light. Dumbledore shouts a spell, but it's too late. The pensieve overflows, spilling silver liquid across the floor. It spreads like mist, and you realize with horror that this is the birth of something far more dangerous than either of them intended, the blending of memory and reality. You hear Dumbledore's voice, desperate, echoing over the roar of the magic. Stop! You'll tear the veil, and then everything vanishes in white. When the world reforms, you're no longer in the circular chamber. You're standing in Godric's Hollow years later. Dumbledore, older now, grief in every movement, stands before a grave. He's alone, but the silence around him hums with presence. The inscription on the stone is simple, Ariana Dumbledore. For the greater good. You can see the shame in his face as he kneels. Forgive me, he whispers. You deserved peace, not my penance. He reaches into his robes and withdraws something small, a silver vial, identical to the one you found, and places it beside the grave. Your memory will remain where I failed you. The image begins to blur, and you realize what you're seeing isn't just history, it's the origin of the vial that led you here. The memory you poured into the pensieve was Ariana's, or at least the fragment of her that Dumbledore preserved. You stumble backward, heart racing as the vision fades. The world pulls you upward, the swirl of magic tightening until, with a gasp, you're back in the office. The air feels heavy, charged with residual magic. The pensieve is calm again, but you know what you saw was no illusion. You sit for a long time, trying to process what it means. Dumbledore didn't just keep secrets to protect others. He was haunted by the past, in ways you never imagined. The war with Grindelwald wasn't just about ideology. It was about guilt, family, and a grief that became the foundation of everything he taught you about power and restraint. As you stare at the still surface of the pensieve, you notice something new. The reflection isn't your face, it's his. Older, tired, but smiling faintly. You saw it then, he says, not aloud, but within the memory itself. I hoped you would, you whisper. Why leave this for me? His reflection blinks slowly. Because I could not carry it any longer, and because you, unlike me, know when to stop looking back. the reflection fades, and the pensive darkens. You realize now that the greatest memory Dumbledore ever kept wasn't a spell or a secret weapon. It was his sister. She was the wound that never healed, the compass that guided every moral choice he made. And by showing you this even in death, he's passing on one last lesson. The true wisdom isn't found in what we remember, but in what we choose to forgive. You lean forward, close the basin, and whisper, "I forgive you." The silver surface shimmers briefly, then stills completely, as though the memory has finally been laid to rest. Outside, thunder rolls softly in the distance and the candles dim. For the first time since this began, you feel peace, not the fragile kind that follows silence, but the lasting kind that follows truth. Yet somewhere deep within the magic of the castle, a whisper remains, a voice not of Dumbledore, but of Ariana herself, faint as breath. "He tried to save me. Now save him. You don't understand what it means, not yet. But you know this isn't over. The memory has only shown you what was lost. What remains is what Dumbledore feared most, and what you are about to find." Night returns to Hogwarts like a heavy velvet curtain drawn across the sky, muffling sound and thought alike. The castle feels timeless again, but you now know too much for comfort. You know that Dumbledore's calm was a shield, that his silence carried the weight of grief, and that the Phoenix itself had been his confession in disguise. You wander the hallways alone, following the quiet rhythm of your own footsteps, until you find yourself once again before his office door. It opens without protest, and the scent inside has changed, not of parchment or dust, but of rain on cold stone, as if the air remembers something it cannot forget. You move toward the desk instinctively, noticing that something new rests upon it, a folded piece of parchment, its corners brittle, sealed with the faint shimmer of protective enchantment. The handwriting across the front stops your breath. "To Harry, if the day ever comes when I cannot speak for myself." The words are simple, but every loop of ink carries the weight of hesitation, as though written by someone who feared both being discovered and being misunderstood. You know instantly that this is what he never managed to give you, the letter he couldn't bring himself to send. You break the seal carefully. The enchantment dissolves like mist, and the parchment unfolds by itself, releasing a soft glow that spreads across the room. The words rise slowly, written in light rather than ink, hovering just above the page so they can be read even in darkness. It begins without preamble. Dumbledore never needed introductions. His words always began as though continuing a conversation that had already started long ago. He writes that there are certain truths which grow heavier the longer they are carried. He speaks of mistakes, of how arrogance and love often wear the same robes, and of how one can destroy as easily as the other can heal. He admits that he knew, from the first time he saw you, what the prophecy truly meant, not a promise of victory, but a measure of sacrifice. You were never destined to defeat Voldemort. You were destined to outlast him, to show that love could linger longer than fear. He writes of the night he stood over your sleeping form at the Burrow before your first term began, how he wanted to wake you and tell you everything, but couldn't bear to shape your childhood with fear before it had even begun. He admits that each time he guided you into danger, he did so not from cruelty, but because he believed the world would not allow you to grow safely. That was his greatest flaw, the inability to imagine a victory that did not require suffering. He calls it the scholar's curse, to value lessons above lives. The letter deepens as though the words themselves are breathing. He confesses that every decision he made after his sister's death was an attempt to balance scales that refused to settle. The order, the mentorship, the endless vigilance, all of it was a ritual of penance, not leadership. He describes how, years ago, when he first touched the resurrection stone, hidden within the ring, he didn't see his family as he expected. Instead, he saw flashes of possible futures, fragments of lives that could have been. In one of them, You were a child raised without war, laughing beneath the same summer sun that once warmed Ariana's face. In that moment, he says, he understood what prophecy had stolen, the possibility of peace. He writes that he began keeping 2 diaries after that day. One chronicled his actions for the world, the plans, the research, the political games. The other, known to no one but himself, was filled with the words he wished he could say to you, the ones too human for strategy. This letter, he says, is born from that second voice, the voice of a man who finally admits that intellect cannot cleanse regret. The next lines are slower, uneven, as though the quill hesitated at every confession. He explains that Fawkes was not merely bound by magic, but by empathy, that each rebirth cost him a fraction of his own vitality, until there was almost nothing left but conscience. He says that the Phoenix taught him more about mortality than all the books of the restricted section combined. To die well, he writes, one must be willing to forgive the living. He wonders whether you will ever forgive him for forcing you to learn that lesson too soon. As you read, you realize something extraordinary. The letter feels alive. The ink reshapes itself, brightening and dimming with each word, as though reacting to your heartbeat. When you pause, it waits. When you continue, it moves faster, eager to release what it has held for too long. You understand that this is not just ink and parchment, but a magical confession, a letter sealed with emotion so potent that it preserved a trace of Dumbledore's consciousness. The next passage speaks of the prophecy itself. He writes that the fragment delivered to him by Snape was incomplete. The true text, recorded in the Department of Mysteries and buried beneath layers of ministry secrecy, carried one additional line, one that he swore never to reveal. It read, "The boy will not live to see peace unless mercy is his final weapon." He says he interpreted it as instruction, to guide you toward compassion even when the world demanded vengeance. Yet in doing so, he often confused mercy with manipulation. He confesses that he allowed you to suffer not to strengthen you, but because he feared the consequences of shielding you. He says this plainly, "I became the very architect of pain I once vowed to prevent." The tone shifts in the final portion of the letter. The sentences grow longer, more reflective, touched by a warmth that feels almost like his voice when he used to speak by the fire. He tells you that if you are reading these words, it means he has already met the reckoning he always expected. But he insists that death is not an ending, only a correction, a return to balance. He writes that love and guilt are the same energy seen from opposite sides of the mirror, and that both are proof of having truly lived. He urges you not to mourn the man he was, but to remember the lesson hidden within his mistakes, that the pursuit of control is the surest path to loss. Then, near the end, the writing falters. The last lines are smaller, the light dimmer, as though his hand grew unsteady. He writes one last truth, that the Elder Wand was never the strongest of the Hallows. He says that while others chased mastery over death, he discovered something greater, the strength to surrender to it. He tells you that his final act was not to defeat darkness, but to trust that light would find its way without him. The letter closes with no signature, only a small drawing, a phoenix in mid-flight, half made of flame, half of light. As you stare at it, the ink begins to glow once more. The parchment trembles slightly, then folds itself back up, the magic sealing it shut again. It's no longer meant to be read. It's meant to be remembered. You sit in the quiet for a long time, the folded letter resting on your lap. The office seems to breathe around you, as if the walls themselves have absorbed the truth within it. You think of everything he left unsaid while he lived, and how perhaps that silence was never cowardice, but self-preservation. Some burdens are too heavy to share until after one's gone. Outside, the wind shifts. The moon climbs above the towers, pale and watchful, casting its light through the stained glass and across the desk where the letter once lay. You can almost feel Dumbledore's presence in that light, not as a ghost, not as memory, but as calm itself. The last of his secrets is no longer a burden between you. It is simply part of the story. You stand, folding the letter one last time, and place it gently inside the drawer of the desk. The latch closes with a quiet click that sounds almost like finality. The pendant on your chest grows warm, pulsing once, not painfully, but reassuringly, as if acknowledging that something has been set right. For the first time since this began, you realize you are no longer waiting for answers. The confession, the phoenix, the letter, they weren't paths to revelation but to acceptance. And as you leave the office, the air feels lighter, filled with the faint scent of ash and lilies. Somewhere deep in the castle, a clock strikes midnight, and its echo sounds less like an ending and more like a promise kept. The following morning greets the castle with mist instead of sunlight. The towers seem to float in a sea of cloud, their reflections trembling across the black lake like memories too fragile to touch. You walk through that haze, every step muffled, as though the world itself is waiting for something. The letter still weighs in your thoughts, its words pulsing faintly behind your eyes, confessions written in light that can't be unread. You know Dumbledore's truth now, but something deeper tugs beneath the surface, something the letter hinted at without fully revealing. He wrote of a bond, stronger than prophecy or power, a bond that frightened even the Dark Lord. You can feel it alive within you like a pulse that doesn't belong to your own heart. When you reach the courtyard, the mist parts. The stones underfoot are slick, the air cold and metallic with the smell of rain. You pause near the fountain where Dumbledore used to stop during his evening walks. The phoenix symbol carved into its base catches your eye. Water seeps through its cracks, tracing lines of age that resemble veins. Something in you whispers that this is where to begin. You kneel beside the fountain and rest your hand upon the stone. The pendant beneath your robes grows warm, almost hot. A faint vibration travels from the charm into the ground. The fountain ripples once, and for an instant the reflection in the water changes. It is not your face staring back. It is Dumbledore's, younger but unmistakable. The calm eyes, the half-smile that hides exhaustion, the expression of someone who knows too much. The vision doesn't speak, but the air itself shifts, charged with that strange blend of serenity and grief that always followed him. You realize this isn't a ghost or a haunting. It's resonance, the lingering echo of a magical connection that neither death nor time can erase. The pendant begins to hum, and suddenly the scene expands outward. You are no longer kneeling at the fountain. You are inside a memory, one you never lived. A great hall, candlelit and circular, older than Hogwarts, its walls carved with intertwined runes and serpents. Two figures stand in the center. One is Dumbledore, his beard shorter, his robes unadorned. The other is an elderly witch, with eyes like molten gold. Her voice is steady, carrying the tone of ritual. She traces a glowing sigil in the air, a pattern you've never seen before, and Dumbledore repeats it, his movements uncertain. She instructs him to focus not on power, but on intention. She speaks of binding through truth, an art older than blood pacts or magical oaths. It's called Concordia Anima, the harmony of souls. Dumbledore hesitates. The ritual requires vulnerability, to expose one's deepest will to another being. The witch reassures him that it can only be forged through shared purpose. Then she gestures toward something hidden beneath a veil of light, a cradle carved of oak and gold. Inside lies a sleeping child with a lightning-shaped mark faintly glowing on their forehead. You recognize it before your mind allows you to believe it. The ritual is meant for you. In that moment, you understand what he did. The bond wasn't formed through teaching or prophecy. It was woven long before you could speak. Dumbledore bound part of his life force to yours the night you were marked. Not as a curse, not as control, but as protection. The ritual joined your fates so tightly that even death could not sever it. Every danger you survived, every spell that should have ended you but didn't, it wasn't chance. It was the unspoken tether between you. His magic became your shield. The scene shifts again faster now, collapsing and reforming into flashes. You see Dumbledore years later, pale and weary, pressing his hand to his chest during one of his coughing fits, whispering that the boy must live. You feel the echo of that same ache pulse within your own heart. You see him on the tower, wand raised, choosing his end with the calm of someone whose life is already half given away. And through it all, the invisible thread between you glows, thin as moonlight, strong as iron. The vision dissolves. You are back at the fountain, breath shallow, the mist colder now. The pendant burns faintly, then cools again, as though settling after revealing too much. You sit back against the stone, the realization unfolding through you like slow fire. You were never just his student. You were the vessel of his last vow, the living continuation of everything he couldn't finish. You look toward the castle. For the first time, you see it differently. Every brick, every corridor hums with Dumbledore's memory, but not as monuments of power, as extensions of that vow. Hogwarts itself may have been drawn into the bond, its ancient foundations absorbing the magic of the ritual. That would explain why the castle always seemed to protect you, why doors opened, portraits warned, staircases shifted as though they too were watching over you. The protection wasn't just faith. It was the lingering intelligence of a spell born from love disguised as duty. As the morning fades to afternoon, you wander through those corridors with quiet reverence. The light through the stained glass windows paints everything in shifting color. You notice things you never did before, the faint golden threads shimmering along the edges of the stones, the way the suits of armor seem to turn slightly as you pass. The castle remembers the bond, even if you only now begin to. You pause at the entrance to the great hall. The long tables are empty, the air filled with the scent of roasted pine and candle wax. You recall Dumbledore's favorite saying, that help would always be given at Hogwarts to those who ask for it. It was more than comfort, it was literal. The castle's awareness was part of him. When he bound himself to your fate, he tied the very spirit of Hogwarts into that promise. His protection became its instinct. You take a seat at the staff table, staring at the chair where he once sat. The pendant glows again, softer now, pulsing in rhythm with your breathing. You close your eyes and listen. The silence hums like a heartbeat beneath the stone floor. You realize you are not alone, not truly. The connection still lives, echoing between your pulse and the ancient walls. You think back to the night of the confession, the letter, the phoenix, and now this, all parts of the same truth revealing itself in layers. The unbreakable bond was never meant to control destiny. It was meant to ensure continuity, a teacher's soul protecting his student even beyond life, a man too burdened to trust the world, leaving behind an inheritance of protection instead of power. As evening falls, the mist lifts, revealing the lake in shades of violet and steel. You walk outside again, drawn to the water's edge. The wind has calmed. The reflection of the castle glows faintly golden, as if lit from within. You kneel by the shore, the pendant warm against your chest, and dip your hand into the lake. The water responds, rippling outward in perfect circles, carrying that same golden shimmer. You realize the bond has changed. It no longer feels like something given by Dumbledore. It feels mutual now, shared. His part of the magic has faded, but yours continues, carrying his essence forward. You are not his creation, you are his continuation. The sky deepens into twilight. The first stars appear, their reflections trembling in the rippling water. You let the quiet settle, understanding that this was what he wanted all along. Not blind obedience, but understanding. The unbreakable bond wasn't a chain. It was a bridge, built so that wisdom, compassion, and strength could outlive the man who created them. As you rise to leave, the last light of dusk touches the pendant. For a moment, it glows brighter than before, a single flare of gold that fades slowly into calm warmth. You don't need to look back at the castle to know that somewhere within its countless walls, the echo of his magic stirs one final time. The vow remains, not to protect you, but to remind you. The only unbreakable bond worth carrying is the one forged in love freely given. You turn toward the night, feeling lighter than you have in years. The bond no longer feels like inheritance. It feels like gratitude, a promise renewed not by power, but by peace. And as the stars gather above the ancient towers, the world seems to whisper his parting thought once more, woven into the very air. The greatest spell is the one that asks for nothing in return. Dawn creeps across the castle again, this time sharp and clear, cutting through every shadow left by the night before. The fog that once clung to the towers has vanished, replaced by a pale brilliance that feels almost intrusive. The world looks clean, almost innocent, as though it doesn't remember what it revealed yesterday. But you do. You carry it all now. The confession, the phoenix, the letter, the ritual, each revelation layering atop the last, until the man you once thought of simply as Dumbledore feels infinite, unknowable, human. You rise before anyone else stirs, drawn to walk the corridors while they're still half asleep. The stones cool beneath your fingertips, the scent of candle wax and dust familiar as breath. The pendant under your robes rests silent against your heart, not glowing, not humming, only waiting. Every corner of Hogwarts seems to watch you differently this morning. The portraits pretend to sleep, but their brushstrokes seem softer somehow, the air around them less heavy. Even the staircases move without the usual creaks, as though the castle itself has accepted a long-delayed apology. You step into the great hall and find it empty except for scattered crumbs and a few fading candles. The silence feels like acknowledgement. You realize that for the first time in years, you're not looking for Dumbledore's guidance. You're walking in the echo of his trust. You make your way outside, the grass still slick with dew, the air holding that early stillness that exists only before the day begins. The lake lies calm, silver and mirror-like, reflecting the sky in perfect symmetry. You think of the ritual that bound you to him, of the invisible tether still lingering somewhere between your heartbeat and his vanished light. It's no longer a burden. It's something gentler now, like gravity, unseen, constant, merciful. You understand that the purpose of the bond was never control. It was faith made tangible, the belief that even in absence, connection endures. The thought settles in you with the quiet finality of truth. You kneel by the lake, scoop a handful of water, and watch it slip through your fingers. It feels colder than usual, older somehow, as if the surface itself remembers. For a moment your reflection shifts. You see not just yourself, but a faint silhouette beside you, shimmering like heat on stone, the outline of Dumbledore as he might have been in his final hours. A tired yet luminous, a candle burning down not from weakness, but from generosity. You don't flinch. You simply breathe. The image fades, leaving only ripples. That is enough. When you return to the castle, the day has begun in earnest. Students hurry past with chatter and laughter, parchment rolls tucked under their arms. Life continues, unbothered by the secrets that shaped it. You walk among them unnoticed, feeling the strange comfort of normalcy. The scent of toast drifts from the kitchens. Peeves hums an off-key tune about forgotten socks. It is as it always was. Only your perception has changed. You pause beneath the archway that leads to the courtyard and glance up. The light hits the stained glass high above, a phoenix mid-flight, its wings spread wide across the frame. You realize you've walked beneath it countless times without ever noticing how lifelike it seems. Now the colors blaze with meaning. The reds are not fire but forgiveness. The gold is not pride but memory. The blues, faint but steady, feel like hope. You take one last detour before the day can claim you, the Headmaster's tower. The spiral staircase rises as smoothly as if expecting you, each step whispering in rhythm with your breathing. When you enter the office, it feels lighter. The air no longer hums with residue or pain. The ash is gone. The vial is gone. Even the faint scent of incense has faded. Only the desk remains, polished, empty, awaiting new ink and new stories. For the first time, the room feels ready to belong to someone else. You sit in his old chair. The leather is worn smooth, the wood familiar beneath your palms. You think of how many nights he must have sat exactly like this, not plotting or commanding, but simply thinking, wrestling with the impossible weight of choice. You can almost feel the ghost of that solitude, but it no longer feels lonely. It feels shared. You rest your hand on the armrest, and the pendant warms again, subtle as a heartbeat. The warmth spreads through you, not with power, but with understanding. You see now how every decision he made, even the cruel ones, even the ones that hurt you, were pieces of the same pattern. He believed that love was not enough to save the world, but it was enough to justify trying. The bond between you was never about destiny. It was about continuity, the passing of an invisible torch that no spell could extinguish. Outside the light sharpens, the portraits stir. One yawns, another coughs politely, pretending not to notice you. You smile faintly. You wonder if they knew all along. Perhaps they did. Perhaps that's why they always watched him with such complicated affection, admiration mixed with pity, pride tempered by grief. They saw the man, not the myth. And now at last you do too. The clock on the wall ticks softly, its rhythm almost human. Time moves forward again. You feel its current draw you gently onward, no longer as a survivor, but as a witness. Dumbledore's story, for all its grandeur and tragedy, was never truly about him. It was about what remains, when wisdom meets compassion, and neither wins nor loses. They simply merge. You rise from the chair, glance once more around the room, and then look toward the window. The grounds stretch below, green and alive, filled with voices and futures you'll never fully know. It's beautiful precisely because it doesn't need your control. You think of Dumbledore's final words on that tower, of the calm acceptance in his eyes, and finally understand what he meant. To step back is not to vanish. It is to allow life to grow in the space you leave behind. As you leave the office, the door closes behind you with a gentle thud that feels like closure. The castle hums quietly in approval, the bond between you and its magic, steady but serene. In the corridor, sunlight spills through the windows, dust motes dancing like sparks of memory. The pendant cools again, returning to silence. You touch it once, not to summon, but to thank. The day moves on. You pass students arguing over books, a pair of ghosts laughing about Quidditch, the scent of breakfast giving way to parchment and ink. Everything is ordinary, and that ordinariness feels sacred. You realize that perhaps this was the true goal of every spell Dumbledore ever cast, to make peace ordinary again. By the time you reach the entrance doors, the sky is a full, bright blue. The world hums with possibility. You pause on the threshold, feeling the warmth of sunlight on your face, and whisper his name softly, not as invocation, but as farewell. The breeze answers, carrying a faint trace of cedar smoke and honey, fading quickly into the air. You step forward, into the morning, into the living world. The truth has changed you, but it has not broken you. The bond remains unspoken, unbreakable, but gentle now, a quiet presence rather than a tether. Somewhere far beyond what eyes can see, a phoenix cries once, clear and distant, and the sound feels like closure. And as the castle door closes behind you, Hogwarts exhales, the long, patient breath of an old soul, finally at peace. And you know the story is no longer his. It is yours to carry onward. The sky above the lake is silver when the last morning begins. The kind of morning that doesn't promise an ending, but carries one quietly, folded within its light. The castle is still. The world seems to hold its breath. You walk alone down toward the grounds where mist clings to the grass and the water mirrors the low, patient clouds. Every step feels deliberate, every sound softened. There is no destination in your mind, only the quiet certainty that you are being led, not by fate, but by understanding. The pendant at your chest is cool now, inert metal and memory, yet you feel its weight with new meaning. It's not magic anymore. It's history. You reach the same spot by the water where you once saw his reflection shimmer beside yours. The air here always smells of salt and rain, as though the world itself remembers tears. You sit on the damp stones, watching the horizon tremble between light and shadow. Nothing happens. No voices, no visions, just stillness, the kind that only follows revelation. And yet deep within that silence, you sense presence. Not a ghost, not an echo, but something subtler, the lingering consciousness of a man who gave everything to time and left behind only calm. You realize that this is not the place where Dumbledore died, but where he continues. The breeze shifts, the lake ripples once. You close your eyes, and without any command the air warms. Not hot, not fiery, just warm, as though the sun has chosen this moment to touch the earth more gently. You don't see it at first, but you feel it. A feather-light heat brushing against your cheek, a faint scent of smoke and cedar. When you open your eyes, there's a spark hovering in front of you. Tiny, trembling, golden. It grows slowly, softly, until it becomes a shape, you know, wings folded, head bowed, eyes glowing like captured dawn. Forks, the phoenix doesn't move toward you, yet its presence fills the space around you. You remember what Dumbledore wrote, that rebirth was not survival, but confession. And this, you understand, is his final one. The bird tilts its head, and for an instant you feel both gratitude and goodbye. No words are needed. None could match the simplicity of this moment. The phoenix flutters once, feathers scattering light across the surface of the lake, and perches on a nearby branch. Its reflection glows brighter than the sky itself. You sit in silence, breathing with the rhythm of the ripples, until you notice something small resting on the stone beside you. A piece of folded parchment, almost transparent, sealed with wax shaped like the Hallows symbol. You don't remember seeing it before. When you touch it, it opens by itself, revealing no words, only a single line drawn in glowing ink. A circle, a triangle, and through them both a line. But this time the line isn't broken. The symbol is whole. It shines once, then fades, leaving only the faint outline burned into the page. You understand, the Hallows are no longer relics of mastery or death. They've become symbols of completion. He has released them, and with them you. You lean back against the stone and close your eyes again. The warmth deepens, the world narrowing to heartbeat and breath. You feel the faintest pulse in the air, like distant wings beating through eternity. Somewhere beyond sound, you hear his voice, not booming, not even distinct, but gentle as a sigh. Not instruction, not guidance, just peace. The kind of peace that comes only after confession, after surrender, after letting go. The phoenix rises from the branch. Its wings unfurl in slow arcs, scattering light like rain. It doesn't circle or pause. It simply lifts, ascending through mist into brightness until only a streak of gold remains. You watch until the last trace vanishes into the sky. The air cools again. The world returns to stillness. You remain there for a long time. You think about the stories you've lived through, the wars, the fears, the victories. You think about how Dumbledore, for all his wisdom, was as flawed as anyone who ever dared to love too deeply. You think of how that truth doesn't diminish him, it completes him. You realize that the greatest legacy he left you wasn't knowledge or power. It was the permission to forgive imperfection, both his and your own. The castle bells begin to toll faintly in the distance. Not a summons, not a warning, just the ordinary rhythm of another day beginning. You rise slowly. The water reflects the light so cleanly now that it seems to erase all boundaries between above and below. For a brief moment the world looks seamless, sky, lake, and you forming one endless horizon. You breathe it in, the feeling of wholeness, of being alive not despite loss but because of it. You begin to walk back. The grass bends beneath your boots, glittering with dew. The sound of morning returns, a bird's cry, a window opening, laughter faint and human in the courtyard. Hogwarts breathes again, unburdened. When you reach the steps leading into the castle, you pause and turn back one last time. The lake lies still, the branch empty, the mist dissolving into pale sunlight. There is no need for another farewell. Everything that needed to be said has already been spoken between silence and understanding. Inside, the corridors glow with warmth. The portraits smile as you pass, some nodding, some simply watching. A faint hum lingers in the stones, the castle's quiet acknowledgement. You realize that the weight you've carried all these years has shifted, transformed into something lighter, almost radiant. Grief, when understood, becomes grace. You reach the top of the grand staircase just as the morning light floods through the high windows. Dust motes spin in the beams, golden and endless. The pendant around your neck glimmers faintly one last time, then fades completely, leaving only metal and memory. You take it off, hold it in your hand for a moment, then place it gently on the balustrade. You don't need it anymore. The bond has fulfilled its purpose. For a moment, the world is utterly still. Then from somewhere far away, perhaps from the very air itself, a whisper drifts through the quiet, soft and content. Well done, my boy. The words are gone as soon as they come, but their warmth lingers. You close your eyes, smile faintly, and let it stay there, not as an echo, but as truth. Dumbledore is gone and yet not gone. His story has folded itself into yours, inseparable now from every step you take. The phoenix has risen, the bond completed, the circle closed. You walk down the stairs into the bright corridors of the living world. Students pass, laughter echoes, light dances across the stone. The castle feels new again. The past no longer clings, it harmonizes. Outside, the morning air greets you with the scent of grass and wood smoke. The horizon gleams, endless and clear. You pause for one last breath, one last thought, not of loss, but of continuation. The world goes on, as it always must, as he always intended. The bells ring once more. You lift your head toward the sky, and in the distance, high above the towers, a single golden feather drifts downward, glimmering as it falls. It lands softly at your feet, catches the light and then vanishes, not burned, not broken, simply gone. The wind carries the quiet, gentle hum of life returning to its rhythm. And as you walk forward, leaving footprints on the wet grass, the story ends not with an ending, but with a beginning whispered through every living thing. Magic was never about power. It was about remembrance. The lake glows, the light rises, and the world exhales, at peace at last.